Shalom, my friends. I am Rabbi Simon, and today I am going to answer 3 questions that have haunted every human being who has ever lived. Where did we come from? Why are we here? And where are we going? These are not abstract philosophical questions. These are not entertainment for the intellectually curious. These are survival questions, because a person who does not know where they came from will never understand who they are. A person who does not know why they are here will spend their entire life chasing things that cannot satisfy them. And a person who does not know where they are going will arrive at the end of their life and realize they never truly lived. For thousands of years, humanity has tried to answer these questions. We have created over 4,000 religions. We have built philosophical systems, spiritual traditions, psychological frameworks, and self-help industries, all in an attempt to explain the human experience. And after thousands of years of searching, the world is more confused, more depressed, more medicated, more disconnected, and more lost than it has ever been. Depression is rising. Loneliness is an epidemic. Young people have no motivation. Marriages are collapsing. The wealthiest generation in human history is also the most medicated. And nobody can explain why. I can explain why. Not because I invented the explanation, because the explanation has existed for thousands of years in the oldest and most precise science of reality ever transmitted, the wisdom of Kabbalah. And tonight, I am going to open that science for you in a way that will change how you understand your own life. If you have ever looked at your life and felt that something fundamental is missing, not a thing, not a relationship, not an achievement, but the reason behind all of it, then stay with me, because what I am about to reveal is the operating system behind your existence. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer from the deepest, most honest part of yourself. How many times have you achieved something, a promotion, a purchase, a relationship, a milestone, and felt a rush of satisfaction that lasted a few hours, perhaps a few days, and then faded completely, as if it had never happened? How many times have you set a goal, worked relentlessly toward it, achieved it, and then immediately began searching for the next goal, because the achievement itself left you strangely empty? How many times have you said to yourself, if I just get this one thing, I will finally be happy? And then you got it, and you were not happy, not for long, not in the way you expected. If you have experienced this pattern, the endless cycle of desire, achievement, emptiness, and more desire, write in the comments right now, I have been running without knowing where. Write it, not as a confession of weakness, as a confession of awareness, because the fact that you can see this pattern is the beginning of everything I am about to teach you. This pattern is not a flaw in your character. It is not a sign of ingratitude. It is not a psychological disorder. It is the most fundamental law of your existence, and until you understand it, you will remain trapped inside it. Let me now explain the mechanism behind your suffering, and I want you to pay very close attention, because this single principle, understood correctly, will illuminate every frustration, every disappointment, and every crisis you have ever experienced. The great Kabbalist Baal HaSulam, Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag, writes, "The purpose of creation is to bestow pleasure upon the created beings, according to the Creator's great benevolence. The purpose of your life is pleasure, not temporary pleasure, not fleeting satisfaction, absolute, eternal, infinite pleasure. The Creator, the force behind all reality, brought you into existence for one reason, to fill you with boundless good. But here is the mechanism that makes this difficult to experience. You were created as a ratzon lekabel, a desire to receive. This is not a metaphor. This is your fundamental substance. Every cell, every thought, every craving, every ambition, Every fear you have ever experienced is the desire to receive expressing itself in different forms. And this desire to receive has a built-in law that governs how it interacts with pleasure. When pleasure enters a desire, it extinguishes the desire. Think of it this way. You are hungry, deeply hungry. You sit down to eat, and the first bites are extraordinary. The flavor, the satisfaction, the relief, it is almost spiritual. But as you eat, the pleasure diminishes. By the time your stomach is full, the food tastes like nothing. The desire has been neutralized by the fulfillment. This is not unique to food. It is the law governing every form of pleasure in your life. You earn 100,000. You feel the rush. Within months you want 200,000, not because you are greedy, because the fulfillment extinguished the desire, and the only way to feel pleasure again is to increase the desire. You need a bigger vessel to feel anything at all. Baal HaSulam explains this with devastating precision. The light, the pleasure, and the vessel, the desire, cancel each other out upon contact. Like pouring water into fire, the water extinguishes the fire evaporates the water. Both disappear. This is why every pleasure in this world fades. This is why the rich man with everything is often more miserable than the poor man with nothing. The poor man still has hunger, he still has desire. Give him a bowl of warm soup on a cold night, and his pleasure is enormous, because his longing was enormous. The rich man, everything is within reach. Nothing requires effort. There is no longing, no struggle, no gap between desire and fulfillment, and therefore, no pleasure. This brings us to one of the most important principles in all of Kabbalah. Baal HaSulam writes that the measure of pleasure is not determined by the thing received. It is determined by the longing that preceded it. Pleasure is not in the object. Pleasure is in the gap between wanting and receiving. The bigger the gap, the greater the pleasure. The smaller the gap, the less you feel. This is why something you worked years to achieve gives you more satisfaction than something handed to you for free. This is why a gift you desperately wanted as a child meant more than 10 gifts you did not care about. This is why the story of Layla and Majnun, the great lovers of ancient literature, is a story not of fulfillment, but of longing. Majnun wandered the deserts, consumed by his desire for Layla. He never reached her, and the story endures not because of what he found, but because of what he felt in the searching. Had he found her, what would have happened the next day? The same thing that happens in every relationship after the pursuit ends. The pleasure begins to fade, because the longing, the engine of pleasure, has been extinguished. Now apply this to the Creator's intention. If the Creator's purpose is to give you infinite pleasure, what must He first create? Infinite longing. And how is infinite longing created? Through a very long, very difficult, very painful process of separation, searching, struggling, failing, and growing. This is your life. This is everyone's life. This is the entire history of the human race. We were not placed in darkness as a punishment. We were placed in darkness so that we could develop the immense longing required to receive infinite light. Now let me show you the structure, because Kabbalah does not speak in vague spiritual metaphors. It describes a precise system with laws as rigorous as the laws of physics. Baal HaSulam teaches that the Creator originally brought the created being, the soul, the desire to receive, into existence in a state of total unity with Himself, complete fusion, absolute fulfillment, no separation, no lack, no distance. Imagine it, a state in which you lack nothing, need nothing, suffer nothing, a state of total unbroken connection with the source of all existence. And then, gradually, systematically, through a precise sequence of stages, the Creator withdrew, not physically, in perception. The Kabbalists call these stages of withdrawal olamot. Worlds. The word olam comes from the Hebrew root he-elam, which means concealment. Each world is a further degree of concealment, a further distance from the awareness of the Creator. There are 5 primary worlds: Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Each one represents a degree of concealment, a further step away from the direct experience of the Creator's light. Below all of these worlds there is a barrier, the Maksum, and beneath that barrier is our world, the world you and I live in right now, the world of 100% concealment, the world in which the Creator is entirely hidden. This is critical to understand. When Kabbalah speaks of worlds, it is not describing planets or galaxies. It is describing states of perception, different levels of awareness. The difference between our world and the upper worlds is not a difference of location. It is a difference of consciousness. Right now, you perceive reality through 5 physical senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell. This is what Kabbalah calls the animal level of existence, not as an insult, as a precise description. An animal perceives reality through its senses and responds to its instincts. A human being, when operating only through the 5 senses, is doing the same thing. The Kabbalists call this level of life, regardless of how intelligent, educated, or sophisticated the person is, the animal level. A cat seeks the most pleasurable food. A human being seeks the most pleasurable career. The mechanism is identical. Both are driven by the internal program of the desire to receive. Both pursue whatever promises the greatest fulfillment for their vessel. Neither has a choice in the matter. Both are governed by their nature. This is not a moral judgment. This is how the system works, and recognizing it is the first step toward transcending it. Let me tell you about a man I will call Gabriel. Gabriel came to me 5 years ago. He was 51 years old, a self-made man who had built a real estate portfolio worth many millions. He had started with nothing, the son of immigrants who worked in a garment factory, a boy who shared a bedroom with 2 brothers in a flat where the hot water worked 3 days out of 7. He had clawed his way to wealth through sheer force of will, 20-hour days, deals that would have broken weaker men, and a relentless, insatiable hunger to never be poor again. By every external measure, he had succeeded beyond imagination. He owned properties across 3 countries. He had a wife who adored him, 3 grown children, and a circle of associates who treated him with the deference reserved for men of serious wealth. And he was dying inside. Not metaphorically. His doctor had given him a diagnosis 6 months earlier: stress-induced cardiomyopathy. His heart was literally breaking. The organ that keeps a man alive was being destroyed by the life that man had built. But the physical crisis was not what brought him to me. It was what happened the night after the diagnosis. He went home, sat in his study, a room filled with awards, photographs with powerful people, framed magazine profiles, and for the first time in his adult life, he wept. Not from fear of death, from the sudden annihilating realization that he had spent 51 years building a kingdom that meant nothing to him, that every deal, every acquisition, every million added to the portfolio had been an attempt to fill a void that only grew larger the more he poured into it, that the hunger that had driven him out of poverty had become a prison more suffocating than the flat he had escaped. He described it to me with the precision of a man accustomed to analyzing balance sheets. "Rabbi, I ran the numbers on my own life. I added up every accomplishment, every possession, every relationship, and the total came to 0. Because every time I achieved something, the pleasure disappeared within weeks. The desire came back bigger. I needed a bigger deal, a bigger property, a bigger number. It never stopped. And now my heart is giving out, and I realize the hunger was never going to stop. It was never designed to stop. That last sentence, it was never designed to stop, told me everything. Gabriel had stumbled through his own suffering onto the most fundamental law of Kabbalah. The desire to receive, when it operates in direct mode, I want, I take, I consume, can never be permanently filled. The pleasure and the desire cancel each other out. The vessel empties. The hunger returns, bigger, louder, more desperate. I did not give Gabriel a spiritual lecture that night. I gave him one sentence. Gabriel, your hunger is not the disease. Your hunger is the most valuable thing you possess. You have simply been feeding it the wrong food. He stared at me. What do you mean, the wrong food? You have been filling your vessel with things that extinguish your desire. Money extinguishes it. Status extinguishes it. Possessions extinguish it. You need something that fills the vessel without extinguishing the flame. Something that the desire to receive was actually designed to hold. And what is that? The perception of the Creator, the awareness of the force that built you, that sustains you, that placed inside you this magnificent hunger precisely so that you could one day be filled with something infinite. Gabriel began to study, reluctantly at first. He was a pragmatist, a man of numbers and contracts. The language of Kabbalah felt foreign to him, but the logic did not. Because Kabbalah is not mysticism, it is a science, and Gabriel understood systems. What changed was not his circumstances, it was his perception. Over the following 2 years, through consistent study, through sitting with others who carried the same question, through the slow and sometimes painful process of learning to see reality differently, Gabriel began to perceive something behind the surface of his life. He described it like this: Rabbi, I spent my whole life looking at the balance sheet. Now I am starting to see the accountant. There is an intelligence behind everything that happens to me. My failures, my successes, the pain, the hunger. It was all deliberately arranged, not to destroy me, to build me, to create in me a longing so vast that only something infinite could fill it. His heart condition stabilized, not through meditation or diet, though those helped, through a fundamental shift in the way he related to his own desire. He stopped trying to extinguish the hunger. He started learning to direct it. He told me recently, Rabbi, I spent 50 years trying to satisfy the desire. Now I understand that the desire was never meant to be satisfied. It was meant to grow. And the place it is meant to grow toward is not another deal, it is the Creator Himself. Before I continue, I want you to do something. If you recognize yourself in what I have described, if you are the person who has achieved, accumulated, succeeded, and still feels the void, or if you are the person who has not yet achieved, but already senses that achievement will not be enough, go to the comments and write, I am ready to understand why I exist. Write it as a declaration, not to me, not to this channel, to the force that placed you in this life and is watching right now to see if you will ask the question, because the question itself is sacred. The question, why am I here, is what the Kabbalists call the awakening of the point in the heart. And once it awakens, everything begins. Let me now explain the structure of human desire in a way that will make everything clear. The desire to receive does not develop all at once. It unfolds in stages, across lifetimes, across generations, across the entire history of the human species. Kabbalah describes 4 levels of desire, corresponding to 4 levels of nature. Domum, the inanimate level. Tzomeach, the vegetative level. Chai, the animate level. And Medaber, the human level. At the inanimate level, the desire is for basic survival, food, shelter, warmth. At the vegetative level, the desire expands to include growth and reproduction. At the animate level, the desire includes social belonging, territory, and status. At the human level, the desire expands into wealth, fame, power, and knowledge. These 4 levels form a pyramid, and like any pyramid, the base is vast and the peak is narrow. Look at reality. What is the most abundant thing in the universe? Inanimate matter. Stars, rocks, dust, empty space. Billions of galaxies of dead matter. This is the base of the pyramid. What is less abundant? Vegetative life. Plants cover the earth, but they are vastly outnumbered by inanimate matter. Less abundant still, animal life. And within animal life, fewer creatures at higher levels of complexity. And at the very top of this pyramid, human beings, 8 billion of them, which sounds enormous until you compare it to the trillions upon trillions of inanimate particles in a single galaxy. But here is the crucial insight. Even within humanity, the pyramid continues. The vast majority of people, billions, live at the level of basic desires: career, family, comfort, security, a simple life. Not wrong, not lesser, simply a stage, a necessary stage. A smaller number pursue wealth, power, or fame. Fewer still pursue knowledge and scientific discovery. Pure scientists, people genuinely seeking to understand the laws of nature, not merely to monetize existing knowledge, number perhaps a few hundred in the entire world. And at the very peak of the pyramid, those in whom the Nakuda Sheblev, the point in the heart, has awakened. The people who are no longer asking, "How can I get more?" but "Why do I exist?" If you are watching this video with genuine interest, there is a very high probability that this point has awakened in you, because a person whose point in the heart has not yet stirred would have clicked away long ago. They would have found this boring, irrelevant, too abstract. The fact that you are still here tells me something about you that you may not yet fully understand about yourself. You are at the peak of the pyramid, not because you are better, because you are ready for a different kind of development, ready for a perception that transcends the 5 senses, ready to begin the journey from the animal level to the level that Kabbalah calls Adam, the true human being. The word Adam comes from the Hebrew root Dome Lelyon, similar to the upper one. The true human being is not defined by intelligence or creativity or moral behavior. The true human being is defined by their resemblance to the Creator, and that resemblance must be built, earned, constructed from the raw material of your desire through a process of transformation that is the entire purpose of your existence. So how does a person begin this journey? How does someone who has spent their entire life operating as a sophisticated animal begin the ascent toward the level of Adam? Let me give you the practical framework. I call these the 3 laws of return because the journey is not about going somewhere new. It is about returning to the place you came from, consciously, willingly, with the full weight of your developed desire. The first law: understand the disease before seeking the cure. This is where most people fail. They feel the emptiness, they feel the dissatisfaction, and they immediately reach for a solution, a new relationship, a new career, a new spiritual practice, a new diet, a new identity. They never stop to diagnose the disease. The disease is not that you are unhappy. The disease is that you are trying to fill an infinite vessel with finite things. The disease is a misunderstanding of how your desire operates. The disease is that nobody ever taught you the difference between pleasure that extinguishes your desire and fulfillment that expands it. Before you seek the cure, you must understand the diagnosis. Study the mechanism. Learn how the desire to receive works. Learn how pleasure and desire interact. Learn why Baal HaSulam calls the light in the vessel opposite in nature. Learn why every direct fulfillment leads to emptiness. Sit with this knowledge until it becomes not just an idea, but a felt understanding. Do not rush past the diagnosis. A doctor who prescribes treatment before understanding the illness is not a healer. He is a danger. And a person who adopts spiritual practices before understanding the fundamental mechanism of their own desire is running on a hamster wheel with a prettier cage. The second law: rise above your level to understand your level. This is a principle of enormous importance. We cannot understand ourselves from within ourselves. Think about it. A physicist can study rocks because the physicist exists at a higher level of complexity than a rock. A biologist can study plants because the biologist exists at a higher level than a plant. A veterinarian can study animals because a human being exists at a higher level of consciousness than an animal. But a human being cannot fully understand a human being, because we are at the same level as the thing we are trying to study. This is why psychology, for all its value, can only describe the symptoms. It cannot reach the root, because the root is above our current level of perception. To understand human life, you must develop a perception that is above human life, a higher consciousness, a sixth sense that perceives what the five physical senses cannot. This is precisely what Kabbalah develops: not belief, not faith, not imagination, a new organ of perception, as real, as tangible, as operational as the organ of sight or hearing, that allows you to perceive the layer of reality that governs everything you experience. The Zohar describes this as the opening of the spiritual eyes. It is not a metaphor. It is the development of a genuine capacity to perceive cause where previously you could only perceive effect. This is the most profound of the three laws, and the most difficult to accept. The Creator brought you into existence in a state of unity. Then He withdrew, descending through 5 worlds until you arrived here, in a state of total concealment, total separation, total darkness. The journey you must make is to ascend back through those same worlds, in the reverse direction. But, and this is everything, you must make this journey yourself. The Creator cannot carry you. He cannot give you the perception. He can only create the conditions in which you develop it. Why? Because the purpose of creation is not merely to receive pleasure. It is to receive pleasure as a complete, independent, sovereign being. A being who has earned their perception. A being who has constructed their own vessel through struggle, effort, and transformation. Consider a child born into extreme wealth. The father provides everything: education, comfort, opportunity, protection. The child wants for nothing. And what happens to that child? In most cases, the child becomes dependent, passive, entitled, and miserable. Not because wealth is evil, but because the child never had to build anything. The child never developed the internal strength that comes from struggle. The child received everything and earned nothing, and therefore experiences nothing with depth. This is why the Creator did not simply keep us in the state of original unity. Had He done so, we would have been like that child, filled with pleasure but with no awareness of it, no understanding, no ability to appreciate, to participate, to contribute. We would have existed in a kind of blessed unconsciousness, full but asleep. To be truly alive, to be Adam, similar to the Creator, you must build from nothing. Just as the Creator brought you into existence from nothing, you must bring your perception of the Creator into existence from nothing. This is the meaning of the Kabbalistic principle. The created being must become a creator. The Creator creates existence from nothing. Yesh Me'ayin. The created being creates perception from concealment, building awareness where none existed. And in this act of creation, the created being becomes equal to the Creator, not in power, in consciousness, in the quality of their being. This is where you are going. This is the destination, not heaven, not an afterlife, not a reward dispensed after death. The full, conscious, self-built perception of the Creator, experienced here, in this life, in this body, through a vessel you constructed with your own hands. If suffering is necessary for growth, does that mean God wants us to suffer? No, suffering is not the goal. It is the consequence of not understanding the system. A child who touches a hot stove suffers. But the purpose of the stove is not to burn the child. The purpose of the stove is to cook food. The burning is what happens when the child does not yet understand how the stove works. Once the child learns, the stove becomes a tool for nourishment, not a source of pain. Your life is the same. The suffering is not a punishment. It is information. It is the system telling you you are using your desire incorrectly. Learn how it works, and the suffering will transform into something else entirely. If we are programmed by our genetics and our desires, do we have any free will? At the animal level, no. You are as free as a cat choosing between two bowls of food. You will always choose the one that promises greater pleasure. This is your program. You cannot override it. But the point in the heart introduces something new. It introduces a desire that does not come from your biological programming. It comes from above, from the spark of the Creator that was planted inside you before you were born into this world. And it is from that point, and only from that point, that genuine free will becomes possible. Not the freedom to choose between pleasures, the freedom to choose between remaining an animal and becoming Adam. Why is the world getting worse if humanity is supposedly developing? It is not getting worse. It is revealing its true state. For centuries, humanity was too busy surviving to notice the emptiness. When you are worried about where your next meal will come from, you do not have the luxury of asking why you exist. But as material needs are met, as technology provides comfort, medicine extends life, and abundance becomes the norm, the spiritual void becomes visible. The depression, the loneliness, the meaninglessness that plague the modern world are not signs of decline. They are signs of development. They are the desire to receive reaching a level where material fulfillment is no longer sufficient. The crisis is not that we have too little. It is that we have discovered that enough does not exist in the material dimension. This is precisely what Baal HaSulam predicted. He wrote that the wisdom of Kabbalah would only be revealed to a generation that had exhausted all other avenues. A generation that had tried everything, technology, wealth, ideology, religion, and found nothing that could permanently satisfy the desire to receive. That generation is now. We are the generation. Do I need to change my religion or my lifestyle? No, Kabbalah does not ask you to change anything about your external life. It does not care what you eat, how you dress, what prayers you say, or what traditions you follow. It does not interfere with your worldly desires, your career, your relationships, your ambitions. These belong to the animal level, and the animal level takes care of itself. Kabbalah is concerned with one thing only, the development of the point in the heart, the awakening of the perception of the Creator. Everything else, everything, is secondary. You do not need to become a different person. You need to become a more complete person. And completeness is achieved not by subtracting from your life, but by adding a dimension that was always meant to be there. Here is what I ask of you. For the next 30 days, commit to 4 things. 1. Study the authentic sources for 15 minutes every day. Begin with the introductions of Baal HaSulam. Do not try to understand everything. Expose yourself to the words. Let them work on your vessel the way sunlight works on a seed beneath the soil. You will not see the growth, but it is happening. 2. Every morning before you begin your day, sit in silence for 5 minutes and hold the question, why do I exist? Do not try to answer it. Simply hold it. Let it expand inside you. The question itself is the vessel. The longer you hold it open, the more space you create for the answer to enter. 3. Find others who carry the same question. Kabbalah cannot be studied alone. The perception of the Creator develops in the connections between people, not within isolated individuals. The Zohar states this explicitly. The Creator dwells in the space between us. Find a study group. Join a class. Sit with others who are asking the same question. This is not optional. This is the methodology. 4. Be patient with the darkness. When you begin this work, you may feel more confused, not less. You may feel more aware of the emptiness, not less. This is not failure. This is progress. You are developing sensitivity. A child learning to read is initially more frustrated than a child who never tried. The frustration is the sign that growth is occurring beneath the surface. Do this for 30 days, not as an experiment, as a beginning, as the first step on a journey that has no end, because the longing it develops is infinite, and the fulfillment it points toward is infinite, and the process of growing from one to the other is the most meaningful experience available to a human being. And now, I leave you with a blessing. May the Creator, the force behind all reality, the intelligence within all systems, the love concealed behind all darkness, grant you the courage to see your life as it truly is. May He awaken in you the point in the heart, that sacred spark of divine longing that no earthly pleasure can extinguish, because it was designed for something the earth cannot contain. May you understand that the suffering you have endured was not cruelty, it was cultivation. Every disappointment was the soil being turned. Every loss was the vessel being emptied. Every crisis was the longing being deepened. All of it was preparation for the moment when you would finally ask the only question that matters. May you find the patience to sit in the darkness, to study when nothing makes sense, to attend the class when every part of you wants to quit, to hold the question open when every instinct tells you to close it and return to the familiar distractions. May you find others who share your question. May you build connections that transcend the animal level, connections rooted not in what you can get from each other, but in what you can build together. May you come to see that this life, this brief, difficult, bewildering life, is the most precious opportunity in all of existence, not because it is comfortable, because it is the one place where a created being can build, from nothing, the perception of the Creator. You came from unity. You were placed in separation, and you are on your way back to a unity so much greater than the original, because this time you will have built it yourself. This is where you come from. This is why you are here, and this is where you are going. Shalom.